happy 4th of July if you celebrate those things. And yeah, anyway, so July, it's the month of freedom, you know, because it's Independence Day and all that, so it's kind of a no-brainer. And it's a lot to think about, freedom these days. You know, not only in the whole world, but within our country as well. And what does surrendering to our freedom mean? And I chose the word our instead of your on purpose. Because when one of us surrenders, when one of us grows, when one of us is heightened in consciousness, it's all of us. There's only one life. And that life is the life of spirit, whatever we want to call that. The life of the one, the life of the divine, whatever, God, goddess, doesn't have to even have a name. In fact, Ernest Holmes, the great teacher of the science of mind, oftentimes called it it. It. Because, you know, it doesn't have any gender or any ethnic group or any. It simply is, and it is the very life of everything that is. Think about that. If, you know, if there's only one first cause and it created everything, what did it create it out of? Itself. There's nothing else to create it out of. And so we're looking at the reality that you and I, each and every one of us, is the divine. So I want you to look at somebody right now. I want you to just take a look at somebody and make sure you all get looked at. And I just want you to say, I salute the divine in you. The divine in you is free. The divine in you is one with everything that is. I am one with you. You are one with me. We are the I that is we. And I love you. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, I was thinking, you know, about this topic and how much we're going through these days. You know, that we're going through a lot in the whole world and in our country. It feels like a pivotal time, you know, when we make a real choice about freedom or not freedom. That's what it feels like. And that we can be on the brink of either one. And what I know it's all about is I know it's all about, first and foremost, consciousness. Because everything begins with causation, everything begins with consciousness itself. So we can look at the outer world, and I know that people have told me, and I'm sure I have told people as well, you know, of being rather disappointed at what's going on in our country, and that's putting it mildly. And some people are very scared, very afraid, and we always want to acknowledge that. And they have a right to be. And what I know, and what we know when we dive deep into these teachings, is that the outer world doesn't determine our freedom. That's the teaching today. If I depend on what's going on in the outer world for my freedom, I'm in big trouble, especially now. And so what we want to look at is how do we come to that place within ourselves where we feel free, where we know we're free no matter what. And what is this freedom anyway? So I found this quote in the Science of Mind magazine. Some of you may have seen it. And I love it. And I did memorize it, but I don't remember it right now, as you all know. So anyway, it's by Albert Camus, the existentialist. And he says, the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. Wow. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so free within yourself that your very existence is an act of rebellion. And how can that be so? Have some of you ever had people say to you, how can you be so happy when things are so terrible right now? Anybody had that said to you? Because your joy doesn't depend on the outside. You know, how can you feel assured and confident when everything looks so bad? Because you don't know, because you know that everything doesn't depend on what's going on in the outside world. That we are dependent on what's the inner world, what's inside. And so Not that we don't, of course, want the outside to be an exemplification of that freedom. However, when it's not there, we can still be free. So we see that there have been so many people, so many incarcerated people, who have actually found their freedom in jail, in prisons. You know, Nelson Mandela is probably the best known of all of them, you know. And there are others, I've heard others speak that have had that experience, that they have come out and actually felt free, that they weren't bound, because either they worked on themselves in prison or they were there before that, you know, within their own consciousness. So we don't have to depend on the outer world for our freedom. Now, of course, as I said before, of course, we want to see the outer world demonstrating freedom. Of course we do. We all want the highest and good. Our theme for the year is about living in the golden age. And what I've been saying, and Reverend Verona has been saying, and all of us have been saying, year after year, week after week, and so forth, is that a new world is emerging, right? A new world is emerging. And that, that the old world has to die. And so we're in death pangs now. Some people would call them birth pangs. And any of you that have children like I have, and I know some of you have, know that labor pains are pretty excruciating, especially right at the very end. You know, right when that little baby's going to come out. It's, you know, it's painful. And after that is the greatest joy. That you see this baby, you see this beautiful child. And so that's what I believe is happening in the world now, because consciousness is evolving. It has been evolving for years. You know, we have the great saints and sages, we have the Buddha, we have Krishna, we have Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, we have, you know, other saints and mystics throughout the years, and most of them were before their time. I mean, Jesus certainly was. Look what happened to him. He was before his time. People saw him in a way that was not true. And some of the Catholic mystics in the Middle Ages, like Meister Eckhart, was declared a heretic. Because what was he saying? The same things we're teaching. And now, look at how consciousness has evolved. It's evolved to the point where what we're teaching is mainstream. That people are, you know, yes, Veronica, I saw that. Yes, you know, finally, yeah. And so that's happening. And so it may look like something is terrible going on, and it looks that way on the outside, and the reality is something wonderful is happening. And can we be the people who declare our freedom in the midst of that, no matter what happens? No matter what happens in this election. And God knows I have an opinion about it, and I'm sure we all do, you know, on what would be the highest good. And consciousness first and foremost. So if it doesn't go the way I think it should go, am I going to fall apart? I hope not. I trust that I know enough of these teachings, you know, that I will stand strong. And it all depends on what Ernest Holmes was talking about in his reading, which I had never read by him before, that unity and freedom are tied up together, are bound together. That, you know, because of the fact that we are one, that you are me, I am you, and this is true. This is, you know, I've had a practice for a while now that when I go walking, and I walk almost every day at Crab Cove where I live, and I've had this practice of every person I see I know is the one. I know is a part of me. And cherishing them and loving them in my heart. Yeah, I don't go up and hug everybody, but you know, but I say hi to the people that are receptive, and you know, but that's a practice. Because how do we do these things? One of the ways we do it is through practice. And I can tell you, 20, 30 years ago, I didn't used to do that. I wasn't even probably as aware of that as I am now. And yet, we are one. And so here's the thing, that because we are one, if I do anything to hurt or harm you or anybody, then I am not free. I am not free because I am not in the unity of life. I am not honoring the unity of life. Do you hear what I'm saying? You know, so in order to really honor the unity of life, if I really know that we're all one, that the tiniest little creature, the tiniest little bug, you know, is part of this one life, I can't hurt. I cannot hurt you. And what would a world be like where the majority of people, I'm not even saying all, but the majority of people were so in the oneness, were so embodied in that sense of oneness that they didn't hurt anybody else? Would that be a whole different level of freedom? And then from that place in consciousness, right decisions can be made. So I know that sounds really simplistic, and I think the reality is that consciousness is simple. It's not real complicated. It's not real difficult. What it means is we are one, that the divine is in me, the divine is in you, and even more radically, the divine is me and the divine is you. So you are the living embodiment of pure spirit, of whatever you want to call this one. You embody it. You walk as it. You know, you talk as it. You have the power of it. And that's the power to know who and what you are in any instant and to be that. That's what Camus is talking about here. He's talking about that your very existence is so tied into freedom and oneness and unity. You are so embodied in that your very life is a radical expression of the divine. That your very life is a radical expression of freedom. That's what I'm saying today. And I don't have a whole lot to say about it, to be honest with you. I have a whole lot written. But you all know, if you've been here much, you all know what happens to what's written. It doesn't necessarily come out. So, what keeps us bound, really? What do you think keeps us bound? What keeps us unfree? Purpose keeps us unfree? Keeps us free. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, what's our purpose here? What's our purpose? And to know what my purpose is. And is my purpose, here's the deal. Thank you for that, because you have me on another stream here. And what my purpose is aligned either with oneness or with separation. That's ultimately, when you go back to Hebrew scriptures, that's the story of the Garden of Eden. Bottom line, they chose separation instead of oneness. That's the metaphysical interpretation of the story. And then after all these centuries, we're still working our way out of that, right? And so we still set the purpose for oneness. We set the purpose for freedom. And to be radically free, radically free. Okay, so look at every area of your life right now. Just take a look at, you know, maybe your relationships, your finances, your home, just all areas of your life. And notice if you feel absolute freedom in all of those areas of your life. Just some of you have funny looks on your faces. You know, notice, because that's our work. Our work is to look at those particular areas. For example, I may be in relationship with someone or friends or family, whatever, you know, and I may not feel free to be who I really am because maybe they expect something else of me. Maybe I've always lived this particular way in my family. Maybe in my relationship I've done things to please. I'm not free. You hear what I'm saying? You know, I can look at my finances and I can say, okay, my finances maybe don't look so good right now. I don't feel a lot of freedom. I don't feel like I can buy what I want to buy and so forth, you know. And we get to look within ourselves and notice, what's our consciousness around abundance? It's not how much money I have in the bank. I have known people. I used to have an assistant down in LA years and years and years and years ago. And she didn't ever have a whole lot of money in the bank. And she was one of the most prosperous people I knew because she knew she was always taken care of. She trusted in the oneness that is her life. And so money just manifested itself in her life because that's where her consciousness was. And even quantum physics all teach this, that consciousness becomes matter. Consciousness becomes form. That's a basic teaching. That's a basic teaching. And so, you know, I know when I've worked on abundance in my life, and Reverend Verona and I have both worked on this a lot too, and we get to work on it here at Agape Bay Area, and, you know, we get to just continually work on that there is plenty, there's more than enough. And how do we work on this? There's one source of everything. God is my source, God is my life. And if the source is my life, then will I ever need for anything? And that might sound like airy-fairy, but it's not. I can testify to it. I would have told you when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would have said, that's ridiculous. I've proven it. And people have proven it. I've proven it in relationships, you know, in different areas, proving these principles, because it's all about our principles. And the principles are oneness. The principles are love. The principles are joy, beauty, harmony, intelligence. All of these qualities, they're all within you. So you get to look at areas of your life and go, oh, in that one I don't seem to really know there's oneness here. In that area, maybe I don't really feel or sense that I'll always have enough. You know, well, you all know, except some of you that are new don't know, but I'm 82, you know. And so, you know, I look at some point, I am going to stop. You know, at some point, I probably won't be doing the kind of work I'm doing. However, I'll still be counseling, I'll still be doing those things. The amount of money that looks like it would come in is different. And does that sometimes scare me a little bit? It can hit a chord sometimes, you know, and I have to remember, and this is the thing, when these things cause fear in you or whatever, that these are old patterns. These are old patterns. This was an old pattern that apparently I grew up with. Even though nobody in my family ever said we didn't have enough. There were 7 kids, you know, and my dad didn't have a real high-paying job, so, you know, go figure. There was a lot of unspoken. And that's what happens in families, right? When we're growing up, whether it's around money, whether it's around relationships, whether it's around your home, whatever, all of those structures. You know, and so I get to look at, oh, that's an old pattern. That's all that is. I know how life works. I've experienced it. And so we look at those areas, and I'll be talking more about this probably next week, those areas where we feel bound in our lives. Those areas where we feel bound, and I can guarantee you in all of those areas, it's where you feel separate from the oneness. I can guarantee you. And come back next week and tell me if that's not true, because I need you to prove that if it's not true. So what we want to do to be that place of freedom is to look at all those areas of our lives, to look at where in me do I buy into separation? Where in me do I not know my oneness? Where in me do I get scared, fearful? Where in me do I depend on the outer world for my sense of security? And I would say, you know, going back to our country, that we have been so blessed in our country, and I know, I know, of course, in all areas we haven't. There's been slavery, there's been homophobic stuff, there's been all this stuff, and our structures have been set up so that we are relatively free anyway, that we're free, you see? What if that all falls apart? I bet not too many preachers get up and say that. What if your whole world falls apart? What if our country falls apart? How would you be with that? How would you be? And I'm not saying you have to feel, oh, I'd be great and da-da-da-da. However, would you still remember who you are? Would you still know your oneness? Would you still trust in the activity of spirit as your life. Because here's what's that, Jerry? You're trying, yeah. That's all it takes, thank you. Because that's all it takes is to try, to put your intention, and that goes back to purpose, to put your intention, to put your purpose out there. That's, that's all it takes. So the last thing I want to say, which was going to be the first thing I said, is, is the word surrender. Why did I choose the word surrender? Because that's a hot button for some people, right? Because surrender in the old-time traditional religions means giving up. It means giving up. It means giving control into some outside force, which God has looked at as an outside force. What we talk about as surrender is giving in to our divine self. When we say surrender, we mean I am yielding to the greatness within myself. Say that right now. I am yielding to the greatness within myself. And believe that, I am yielding to that. I'm surrendering to my good. I'm not surrendering to something outside of myself. I am surrendering to the good that's in me already and that will never leave me because I am an eternal being of light. And that's the reality. So that's the road here, that's the road. And I would say we all get to travel down it, and I'm not sure any of us is totally 100% there. And we get to be with it, and we get to acknowledge, like Jerry acknowledged, I'm trying, I'm doing my best. And you put that intention out there, and you get prayer from a practitioner, or a fellow classmate, or a fellow congregant. You put it out there. I want help with this. I want help. And believe me, the power of prayer. And for us, prayer is affirming what we know to be already true. So when I pray, like let's say you come to me asking for more love in a relationship or more harmony, my prayer for you isn't, please, let there be more harmony or love. My prayer is, I know that harmony and love's already within. It's already within everybody in this relationship. You see? And then there's a law of the universe that says yes and that acts upon it when we really believe it and feel it. So that's our work. That's our work, to come back to basic truth, to surrender, as Reverend Michael calls it, surrendering to the next stage of our spiritual evolution. We surrender to the, if there's something up for me, then I get to look at that and go, what's wanting to emerge here? What's wanting to happen? Many of you know I was ill the last few weeks and hospitalized and all that good stuff. I had a really bad case of vertigo, and it was one of the most wonderful few weeks of my life because I got to be still, I got to go deep, and I'll tell you all about it some other time, today's not the day, but I got to go deep, I got to have a more real understanding of my own divinity and of everybody else's divinity. The feeling of the presence in my room was so thick. And that I knew that experience brought the circumstances forth for that. So one of my minister friends said to me recently, she said, well, it's too bad you had to suffer to get that. And I said, well, you know what? I don't feel bad about that. It took what it took, And perhaps if I had been more evolved or whatever, perhaps it wouldn't have taken that. But I'm fine with what it took. I didn't hear, Yeshua complaining about being crucified, I'm sorry. It's horrible up here. So anyway, I'm rambling now. I want to tie it up so that I don't go on and on and on and on. As some of you know I can. So basically, today the message is yield, surrender, give in to your innate freedom. It's within you already. Say yes to it. And then what will happen, I guarantee you, is anything in you, thank you, Bonnie, anything in you that is not free or feels unfree will show up. And that's where you get to do your work. That's where you get to keep affirming and knowing. And come here. Okay. So Bonnie's saying that's why we can be in gratitude for those things. Yeah. Because if we look back on every area of our life, if you look back, I look back on my life, everything was exactly what it needed to be for me to be here right now. So, surrender, surrender, surrender to our good. Because when you surrender to your good and to your freedom, you're doing it for all of us. I guarantee you. And the way the universe is, we're all one, and so the vibration rises. And it rises very strongly when any one of us makes that leap in consciousness. So I know sometimes it doesn't look like it, but I guarantee you, who you are and the way you are is making a huge impact on this planet and in this world. And the world, by the way, is all of the collective thought forms and so forth. The planet is Mother Earth, and she's absolutely fine. You know, it's the world that gets sometimes crazy. All right. I think the whole building here is telling me stop. So come on. So Reverend Verona and I are going to pray together. So I invite you to turn.